Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another one of these Transformers TCG analysis discussion videos, whatever you want to call them. Anthony joining you once again, and I know there was supposed to be gameplay today, but the gameplay that I had recorded to go with this, the audio was all crappy, so I ended up having to scrap it, and you're just getting this today. Or maybe it's on Sunday. If it's on Sunday, that was because I kind of got to this a little late due to the fact that the election was taking up so much of my attention. So, yeah, happens, I guess. But anyways, today we're going to be talking about a couple of the World Strike Beta cards. And we've already talked about these cards, actually. The two in question are Countdown and especially Last Line of Defense. Now, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I put out a gameplay basically showing off the initial testing I did for those two cards as well as Turnabout Snare, but Turnabout Snare isn't really relevant to this video. And afterwards, me and John had a discussion about what potentially was a problem with those cards. And we came to the conclusion that Last Line of Defense giving Brave to Omega Supreme was a problem. Now, just as a quick reminder, in case you don't know what either of those cards do, Countdown is a 4-star character, or a 4-star Micromaster, essentially. The stats and the keywords aren't relevant here, it's just the skills. He has Stealth while untapped in alt mode, and he also has an alt mode once per turn. If this or one of your Omega Supremes or Guardians would take 2 or more attack damage, you may move one of those damage counters onto an enemy. As for bot mode, he has the lowest attack equal. He has plus attack equal to the lowest attack value of one of your Omega Supremes or Guardians in your KO area, and it's the same thing with his defense stat. So once Omega Supreme gets KO'd, and of course I'm talking about the Titan version of him, who really isn't an actual Titan, but whatever. So basically you're either 7 defense, or you're either, essentially, it's a plus attack boost, so it's either 8 attack and 2 defense, or 5 attack and 3 defense. So there's that. So Countdown, basically, you keep him in alt mode while Omega Supreme is alive, and once he's dead, you flip into bot mode and just kill something. As for Last Line of Defense, and this is the primary issue here, what it does is it gives Omega Supreme Brave and a second armor slot, and it also gives you the ability that when one of your opponent's characters untaps, you have the option of scrapping a card from your hand, and if you do 1 damage to all enemies. Seems decent enough. Also gives him plus 4 health and plus 1 defense. Now, back to the test. So we came to the conclusion that Brave was the issue. So we did some further tests, and we found that Brave was still an issue. So we said, okay, Brave is an issue. I submitted that feedback. If you want to hear exactly what I said, I'll put there, or actually I won't put a link. I might put a link in the description to that video where I talk about this stuff, but in the video that I did analyzing Turnabout Snare, Countdown, and Last Line of Defense, I did basically say for Last Line of Defense what the feedback I initially submitted. So that was what we thought was the end of that. We did a bit more testing afterwards that I wasn't anticipating, because in the second phase of the World Strike Beta came out Power Glide, who is a triple changer battle master. And what he does is, we're looking at his alt mode effect here specifically, where when your opponent moves a damage counter onto one of your other characters, instead the damage counter moves onto this. So you have to hit Power Glide with moving damage. And on top of that, he had a stratagem, Thermal Reciprocation, which was a 3-star stratagem that gave him plus 1 attack, plus 5 health, and whenever your opponent moved a damage counter onto Power Glide, you put a counter on Thermal Reciprocation, and when the character upgraded with Power Glide's weapon mode, that being S2 Thermal Reciprocator, did attack damage to an enemy, you moved the damage counter from Thermal Reciprocation to the defender. So basically, you would use Power Glide to keep damage off your other characters, move it onto him, and then just fling it back at Omega Supreme later on. And I used it in a deck with Windsweeper and Slipstream. That deck lost to Omega Supreme. Then we decided, okay, let's try running a super hyper aggressive orange heavy deck. We ran Dinobots against Omega Supreme. Omega Supreme won convincingly again. At that point, we came to the realization, wait a minute, even Dinobots aren't getting any damage through. We realized that Brave wasn't the issue at that point. We realized that the double armor slots was the issue, because you could basically get you were getting a minimum of Tough 3 with either a copy of Smoke Cloak or X-Pad, and then reinforced plating in the other slot. So that's Tough 3 minimum, and then you could get a max of Tough 7 via Superior Plating and 3 copies of X-Pad. So I submitted feedback again saying, okay, Brave is not the issue, it's this extra armor slot, get rid of that, you're good to go. And sure enough, for the phase 3 of the beta, they did. They switched it from an extra armor slot to an extra utility slot. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, so let's build the deck take advantage of that extra utility slot and see if that's just as much of a problem. So I took out some cards and I replaced it with 3 copies of Urban Camo and 3 copies of Spinner Rims. Because Spinner Rims essentially gives you an extra tough 1 off a white icon, so it was essentially a tough effect. And we decided to run it up against my Prime and Crew deck, which was supposed to be the video that came out today or yesterday, or depending on whenever this goes up. But again, the audio kind of got crappy, so we had to scrap it. But result of that video, Omega Supreme won convincingly again. At this point, we're like, okay, there's one hyper-offensive deck we haven't tried yet. Insecticons. So I pulled out all the stops to build Norm's Insecticon deck, and I ran it up against Omega Supreme with the changes to last line of defense. And remember, Countdown's on the team. Insecticons lost convincingly. Another win for Omega Supreme. So at this point, me and John are like, okay, this is still a problem. What can we do to fix this? So the first thing we decided to do was, let's see, what was it now? I'm actually blanking on what it was. Oh yeah, there's one thing that wasn't on the team, or that was on the team that I haven't mentioned. Heroic Spotlight. Because if you do the math, Countdown is 4 stars. Omega Supreme is 19. Last line of defense is 1. That adds up to 24. You could put a star card in, but the better play is Heroic Spotlight and take 2 copies of Heroic Resolve. Adds 2 extra double blues into the deck, and Heroic Resolve itself was causing a couple of issues where I would have killed Omega Supreme and had the game, but then a Heroic Resolve dropped and pretty much just that up. So we figured, okay, Heroic Resolve was a little too powerful on Omega Supreme, so let's take that out. So we tested it again after this change, after making last line of defense cost 2 stars, which was the change. Omega Supreme won convincingly again. At this point, we're like, okay, maybe Countdown's a little too powerful. So we increased the threshold for the damage needed to trigger his ability from 2 to 3. And we kept the change to last line of defense star cost. Omega Supreme won convincingly again. Admittedly, that one may not be a fair analysis because we only had time to test Insecticons against it, and other decks might take a better advantage of it, but Omega Supreme still won convincingly, and Countdown really actually didn't trigger a whole lot because Omega Supreme was still just flipping an insane amount of blues. So at this point, we're like, okay, maybe this +1 defense boost is the problem. We took that away, and Omega Supreme won again convincingly. They were closer than when he had the double armor slots, but that's not saying a whole lot. Now, we were thinking about taking away the health boost, but the problem is that if the health boost wasn't there, I would have killed Omega Supreme much quicker every time, and Omega Supreme would have lost every time. And he would be just as garbage as he was previously. So we didn't do that. And at this point, I have to throw the white flag up. I don't know if anything can be done to fix Omega Supreme. Like, the term broken, I feel, is a little overused. And used in an incorrect manner. So, when I say something is broken, what I mean is that it creates a meta state that is so skewed towards towards whatever the issue is, or whatever the most powerful card is, or whatever it is. It creates a meta state where the only way to beat the powerful item in question is to use the powerful item in question. And as an example of this that isn't Transformers related, Lysander's trump card in Pokemon. Now, I'm going to put a link in a pinned comment to a old PTCG radio video on Lysander's trump card getting banned when it was banned back in 2015. Ross does a much better job of explaining why it was a problem than I ever could here, but basically, let me sum up that by saying, basically, it allows you to infinitely reuse resources, which in Pokemon you're not usually able to do, and it allowed you to play a bunch of cards that locked your opponent out of the game, and the only way to beat this thing was to use this thing, which was an engine consisting of like Seismitoad EX, Lysander's trump card, and a few other cards that I'm not going to mention here, but the only way to beat that was with that, and basically it was whoever could get to their Seismitoad first won. And Seismitoad wasn't really an issue outside of that, so when they banned Lysander's trump card, Seismitoad still just wasn't an issue anymore. It was still a good card, it just wasn't game-breaking like it was with Lysander's trump card. Last line of defense is in a much worse situation than that. Because not only is the only thing that could actually, nothing can beat it, now that I think about it. Not even another Omega Supreme deck. Because basically how it would go is you just both constantly be flipping blues and it end up in a stalemate unless you're playing at some level of black icons, which, I mean, you can, and also Energon Axe, that's a thing. It would just be extremely slow, it would take forever. It would not be fun. It would just be only Omega Supreme can be viable, and it would just be a slow, grindy match that wouldn't be fun for anyone. And basically what this means is if this card is released as it is, I should say, it's basically going to be in tournaments and formats that allow Bayformers cards, it's going to be you play Omega Supreme or you lose. That is why this card is broken. It creates that meta state. And like I said, I don't know what to do. And I actually am intending on sending a link to this video to Bayformers directly so that way they can see kind of my breakdown of this. And if any of you at Bayformers are watching this, please understand, I am not trying to attack you. You are doing a great job with these cards. I've read every single card, and while there are some with insane blocks of text that are a little annoying at times, the effects that you're putting on these and the things they do are incredible. You are doing a great job. However, you did too good of a job with this card. This card, like, I get it. You were trying to make Omega Supreme viable, and you did, but you made him too viable. And again, I genuinely don't know if anything can be done to the card as it is now to fix it. The only solution I see is that you have to scrap this card entirely and rebuild it from the ground up. Of course, this is one guy's opinion on this. Perhaps somebody else has found something else. And if somebody has, and there's multiple instances of feedback to back that up, then just completely ignore what I say because I'm clearly an outlier in this situation. But if other people are reporting the same thing, this card needs to pretty much be not rewritten, not reworked. It needs to be what's the word I'm looking for here? It needs to be teared down and rebuilt from the ground up. And for those of you who are watching who aren't a part of Bayformers and play Transformers, do everybody in the community a favor. Test this card out. If you have access to a copy of Omega Supreme, hell, print off a proxy of Omega Supreme. Print off a proxy of Countdown. Build a blue Omega Supreme deck. Use Last Line of Defense. Test it yourself. And submit feedback to Bayformers directly so that way we can find a way to make this card either A, not broken, or B, prove that it needs to be teared down, rebuilt. Because again, if this card is released in its current state, the game will be Omega Supreme only. And with that being said, I know this video was a lot less lighthearted compared to what usually happens around here, but I felt the need to put this out because the video from a couple of weeks ago is now kind of outdated, essentially, and I needed to get this out in a way to show kind of what the issue is with this card. And I would have just typed it in the Bayformers feedback forum, but that would have taken way too long. So it was just easier for me to create a video and submit that to them. And plus, maybe there are members of the community outside of Bayformers that are disagreeing with me. And if you do disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you did to beat Omega Supreme. Let me know if you did something to change it, to make it not broken. And if you haven't submitted that feedback to Bayformers, do it. Because I want Omega Supreme to succeed. Just, like, I mean, honestly, who wouldn't want Omega Supreme to succeed? Like, Omega Supreme is just awesome. But as it stands now, he's succeeding too much. And again, I went off on a tangent there. This video is a lot less lighthearted than usual. But again, I felt the need to kind of make this. So I'm just going to cut it off here before I start rambling again. So even though, again, it was less lighthearted than usual, hopefully you enjoyed what you saw here today. Hopefully you help us try to figure out if we can fix this or not. And yeah, that will do it for this video. Peace out, y'all.